Over the next 5 years, Metro Vancouver is looking at investments in infrastructure of more than $6 billion. These are huge projects designed to meet the needs of a growing, thriving region. But Metro Vancouver can't do it alone. Many of these projects require funding from other levels of government. That's where the Finance and Intergovernment Committee comes into play. Linda Buchanan is the Vice Chair of the Metro Vancouver Board and the Chair of the Finance and Intergovernment Committee. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure to talk with you today.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it brought about a lot of challenges, as well as some new possibilities. What would you say is the opportunity that you see for the Finance and Intergovernment Committee?
So I think we first need to acknowledge, first and foremost, this has been an incredibly difficult time for a lot of people and will continue to be so for quite some time. But it's also brought very unprecedented alignment of priorities for all three levels of government. So it's a really good opportunity for us to be collaboratively working together, which we historically do, but to really get focused on where do we need to go to make sure that we can continue to invest in the things that make lives better.
Give me an overview of these infrastructure investments happening over the next 5 years.
So we have a very ambitious program moving forward over the next 5 years. So we have more than $6 billion worth of shovel-worthy, investment-worthy projects, infrastructure projects. That includes upgrades and replacements of drinking water facilities, wastewater treatment facilities, renewable energy generation, climate change resiliency, as well as affordable housing redevelopment.
How does the process work to attract investment from different levels of government?
A lot of it really is building on the strong relationships that we have, and then getting senior levels of government to understand what the projects are that we have and how they align with their priorities. There are strong relationships that we have to have as the politicians, and as well as our staff that need to have really strong relationships with government staff, and really looking at how do we advance these objectives forward, working together.
Is there a formula in terms of what the federal government, provincial government will contribute?
Typically, it's a third, but you know what? These are unprecedented times, and so sometimes that changes, but this is really about three levels of government coming together and co-investing, and we have, as I said, a long history of that and a really strong foundation of collaboration and planning that has helped shape this region for decades, and so we're looking at continuing to move forward with that, and Metro Vancouver is really poised. And the Iona wastewater treatment plant is our priority as a board that we want to be advancing forward because it's a piece of infrastructure that needs to be replaced, but there's so many other benefits that come out of that project for all of us that really reflect on not just our priorities, but our values as Canadians.
You've mentioned that Metro Vancouver already has a strong relationship and a strong history of collaboration with the different levels of government. So what's different now since COVID because there's even more alignment?
We know that COVID-19, as well as climate change, which is a significant priority for all of us, that it disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable people in our communities. And so, we need to put an equity lens on how we're moving forward as well. COVID has given us the opportunity to pause a little bit and really think about how is it that we're going to move forward to make it a better place for all people.
What you're speaking of sounds like adding more resiliency to our region.
It absolutely. So it's really about building the resiliency, and so we need infrastructure that's resilient against future shocks, but it's also about creating resiliency in people, and if we want to see our a better way, a better life for people and more prosperity for people in our region, then we need to build resiliency within ourselves and our communities, as well as within the infrastructure or that built environment that we all rely on for a great quality of life.
I'd love to get a more specific example of what resiliency would look like. So let's say 10 years from now, another pandemic has struck. However, this time we're more resilient. What does that look like for an individual or a family?
When we had to close down well, everything, all infrastructure. When I say that, our more vulnerable residents were disproportionately impacted, the very places that they would go, so maybe they had access to a shelter or housing for the night, but during the day they would go to our public infrastructure, our libraries, our community centers. We shut those all down. And they had no places to go. And we were asking people to stay socially distant, to wear masks, to
wash their hands.
To wash their hands. And people in our communities did not have access. Some people in our community did not have access to those things. And it caused a lot of stress, not only for them, but for residents who, were watching, because this illuminated a lot of the challenges that we face in local government. And I think our communities across Metro Vancouver did an amazing job. And as mayors and as a region, we came together to actually talk about some of these specific issues, including like food security and the appropriate kind of housing that we need. So in 10 years, I think we'll do even a better job in the sense of creating, if we look at the regional, now I'm shifting to how we work as a region, if we look at the Regional Economic Prosperity Initiative and trying to look at what's the kind of investment, strategic investment that we need in the region that's going to bring good paying, family paying jobs to the community, that there is investments in our communities around appropriate infrastructure, that we have the kind of local food that we need in place for people, and that we're building the kind of housing that we need that meets the needs of a whole range of people with different economic means. And that we know that what do we need to have for those people right at the get-go, so not in hindsight. At the regional level, we know that a lot of those things we do together. We do, Metro Vancouver, we have a housing corporation, so we do deliver affordable housing for many people, residents across the region. We want to continue to build upon that, and how do we redevelop the sites that we have to make them better, as well as strategic investment in new development in that regard. And we need to be able to make sure that again, that investment, that economic investment, is creating the kinds of jobs that people really need to live in the Metro Vancouver area. I think what's also become very evident is that the very jobs that we all now know very well are essential to our well-being and our quality of life are absolutely critical. And so we need to make sure that people are getting a fair wage and a good wage and a livable wage in our community. We need to make sure that our infrastructure that delivers drinking water and the wastewater that we need can absorb growth within the region. We saw our regional parks became everybody's backyard. And so how do we, attract strategic investment to enhance our parkland and the green environment that we want to see, and that our infrastructure is resilient in terms of an earthquake. And so it will stand the test of time if we get that kind of shock to the region. We have a lot of things that were illuminated for us during this crisis, and it's a good opportunity for us to, as I said, we've been aligned in terms of priorities and values as senior levels of government. And I think it is a pivotal point in history where we can say, how do we move forward together and really invest in the very critical things that support built environment infrastructure, as well as equity for the more marginalized within our community, as well as people who are delivering essential services. So all the pieces of that puzzle are put together and support all people. Because at the end of the day, that is what we do as decision makers and politicians. It's really about delivering the services that make life better for people.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Linda Buchanan is the mayor of the city of North Vancouver. She is also the vice chair of the Metro Vancouver board and the chair of the Finance and Intergovernment Committee.